What's up, everyone? Welcome to my podcast. Today, I will be diving into some theater history. Specifically, history from 18th century Italy. We will be discussing the playwright Carlo Goldoni and his play The Fan, also known as The Second Ventaglio. We will go over some facts about the playwright, the plot of The Fan, as well as the significance of the fan itself. Here we go! Carlo Goldoni. Let's take a second to rewind the clock back to the 1700s. We are now in Venice, Italy, the birthplace of Carlo Goldoni. Goldoni was a child of Margherita Salvioni and Giulio Goldoni and grew up with a love for theater. By the age of 8, he already began creating stories in his childhood home using his imagination and puppets. You can still visit his home in Italy today, where the puppet theater he used still remains. Goldoni's grandfather influenced much of his love for theater, but Goldoni's father was a physician and encouraged Goldoni to do well in school. To please his father, he earned a degree in law and even began to work. Although Goldoni had a job lined up and was about to start using his law degree, he gave up the occupation to become a full-time playwright and became fully immersed in theater. Although Goldoni was widely known for his comedic plays, one of which we will be discussing shortly, Goldoni had a major impact on the world of music. Goldoni wrote many stories for operas and created what is known as drama giocoso, or if you don't speak Italian, that means drama with jokes. Goldoni would create stories with realism and included the ensembles in the plots of his stories, which wasn't very common during this time. Some of these operas were Belisario, Griselda, and Rosamonda. Within his plays, Goldoni highlighted social classes in a very unique way. Each class had a different characteristic. The characters who belonged to the higher, more wealthy classes were always out of the loop in some way. Commonly, Goldoni allowed the audience to have more knowledge than these wealthy characters, which was very exciting as an audience member, especially if you were of the lower class. As for the lower class characters, Goldoni always made them witty. They seemed to have a different kind of intelligence that made the audience want to root for them. This was a tactic to entertain the audience, and it turned the tables on the limitations of the class system. In his stories, Goldoni could give power to the underdog, which was extremely appealing to audiences. Now, let's see if you can notice some of these characteristics within the plot of his story, The Fan. The Fan. The Fan is one of Goldoni's famous romantic comedies. It was first published in Paris, a place that Goldoni was very fond of and actually lived for a portion of his life. But it became extremely popular in Italy. This play revolves around two different love triangles that interweb between the characters Signor Everest, Baron del Cedro, and Canada, as well as Crispino, Coranto, and Nina. Now, please bear with me, because a love triangle is never easy to explain, especially when you're just listening to the story. But the play begins with the introduction of the characters in a local coffee shop at the local inn. Everest, an upper-class young gentleman, and Canada, the niece of the lower-class widow named Gertrude, catch eyes for each other. After speaking with Everest, Canada bows to him, causing her fan to fall and break. Everest insists on taking the fan to the local shop to replace it. At the shop, he runs into Canada's friend Nina. Everest requests Nina give Canada the fan on his behalf, as he does not want Canada's Aunt Gertrude to see him doing this. See, during this time, gifting a fan to a young lady was almost as big of a deal as asking for her hand in marriage. Susanna, the local shopkeeper, sees this interaction and believes that Everest is gifting the fan to Nina, sparking the rumor that Everest and Nina are involved. This event causes a chain reaction of chaos, and Count Rocco Marina, who is a wealthy local, hears of these rumors and tries to play matchmaker for these ladies, creating even more confusion for the men and women in this story. This is just a whole mess. The webs are interlocked, and Canada is devastated that Everest apparently chose Nina over her, and Crispino and Caranto, which are some lower class locals, argue as they both want Nina's hand in marriage. The story ends with the fan finally being gifted correctly to Canada, and she and Nina ultimately end up with Everest and Crispino, the people that they truly loved. One thing about Goldoni is he is great about using physical comedy. In this play, we have doors slamming in people's faces and physical fights between Crispino and Caranto over Nina's love. Goldoni is great at creating physical and emotional comedy throughout his plays. I really hope you all had an okay time trying to follow this crazy mess. But overall, you can see how Goldoni loves to create a web of conflict between his characters. The upper-class characters, including Gertrude and Count Rocco Marina, were the cause of all of this mess. The lower and middle class worked together to create the solution for the problem. Although Goldoni loves to create conflict and confusion within his stories, he always resolves the mishaps with a happy ending. I believe that's why his plays were so widely popular. He mixed classes and levels of intelligence and gave the audience an opportunity to have more knowledge than some of the other characters, which drew them even further into the plot of the story. I mean, who doesn't love a rom-com with a happy ending? I know I do, and I know that I could really see this story coming to life in modern times. The importance of the fan. Now, let's look at a quote from this play. In Act 3, Scene 6, Everest finds Nina and begs her to give the fan back to him. He says, "I give it to you, and I would not ask it back did my whole life's happiness hang on it. I will buy you another, far better and more beautiful. But for heaven's sake, give me back that fan, and quickly too." Now you may be wondering, what's up with this fan? Why would he care so much about that silly little thing? I know I was confused when I first read this play. Why did gifting a fan cause so much conflict? In the article 18th Century Fans and How They Were Used, written by Jerry Walton, she explains, fans were often given as a gift to mark special occasions or events. For instance, if a woman became betrothed or married, she might receive a fan in celebration. Fans with wedding themes were often given to brides-to-be by their future husbands, or brides gave them to their attendants. Fans were pretty much a tool for flirting during this time. It's interesting how a simple object such as a fan could cause such a stir. After I read The Fan, I began brainstorming different ways that this play could be staged. All I could picture was a group of middle schoolers. boy has a crush on a girl. He likes the girl, but is way too scared to tell her, so he writes a note. In the note, he says, "I have a crush on you." He passes it to the girl's friend, but everyone sees him passing the note. The teachers and the other students think that he likes the friend, when in reality, he likes the girl, causing major drama in the middle school class. It's the same idea in this play, but instead of a fan, it is now a note. Maybe we call this play The Note rather than The Fan. I don't know. But you can kind of see how this story can relate to a modern story. It's really interesting how you can connect old plays and the ideas and the kind of influence they had back then and see how something similar could happen now if we just switch it up to make the context a little bit more relatable for ourselves. Now that you've gotten a little bit better of an understanding of the meaning behind The Fan, as well as our playwright, Carlo Goldoni, I hope that you've been able to add a new tidbit of information to your understanding of theater history. Now remember, you can always visit Goldoni's house in Italy if you're ever around there, see his little puppets. You can read this play and all of his other plays. He's a very entertaining playwright, and I've read a few other of his plays, and they're all very similar. They all have that really good, warm, fuzzy feeling of a happy ending. So thanks so much for listening to the podcast today, and TTYL.